I don't think this painting belongs to you. It looks AI generated. Go fool someone else. In a quiet luxury gallery, a teen sketches while the dealer laughs at his cute doodle. Then the dealer notices a small mark near the signature, and the whole mood flips. Smiles fade. Phones come out. Something inside that frame isn't what it seems. Stay to the very end. One tiny detail changes everything. A careless laugh lights a fuse. A signature turns into a key. Doors close, whispers rise, and a quiet afternoon becomes a test of truth, power, and pride. If you enjoy tense, real-feel mystery stories, please subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next one. Where are you watching from? Comment your city name below. I'm reading everyone. The glass front of the gallery held the street outside like a flat gray lake. Rain ran down it in small threads. Cars moved past with their lights on, slow, a long white, sigh each time one stopped. Inside, the white walls were so clean, they seemed to give off their own light. The floor was a pale hardwood that clicked when someone crossed it in good shoes. You could hear the air moving. You could hear the soft stall of a dehumidifier in the back. You could hear nothing else. He had taken a bench near the center. He sat very still, his back straight, his sketchbook on his knees. His hands were sure but light. He had a pencil and a simple eraser and nothing more. He was small for his age, with new shoulders, and his jacket was a thin denim with the collar turned against the chill. He was a black kid with a close cut and neat hands. He was watching the room with the kind of slow attention you only see in people who spend time looking at things that do not move and will not speak. On the far wall, under a track of cold lights, hung the painting that made people stop. The plaque beside it was small. The frame around it was dark and deep. The surface of the painting looked soft, even from a distance. It pulled your eyes the way windows do at night. The title was The Quiet Bell. The artist's name was there in clean letters. A small car near the edge of the plinth told the price range of recent sales. Not this one, because this one did not have a price. He had drawn that frame first in a few long, easy lines. He had matched the angle where the light hit the top rail. He had marked where the paint was a shade darker, toward the corner. He was not tracing it the way tourists do when they want to copy a famous thing. It was not light and not slavish. He looked, and he moved, and he let his hand work like it had worked many times before. Every now and then he glanced at the other paintings in the room, the small works in lacquered frames, the curved pieces of glass that caught the light. He looked around like someone who had been told to keep his eyes up where people could see them. There were not many people inside. A couple in their 30s took a slow lap, shoulder to shoulder, in dark coats. A man sat at the desk near the back, at the little counter with a tall vase and a stack of catalogs. He wore a suit that fit, a pale shirt, and a tie that said he knew what ties were for. He looked like someone whose voice would not carry very far, but whose words would. His hair was going gray in an even way, and it looked like he had been walking around this room for many years. He watched the boy for a while over the top of his screen. The boy was careful where he put his feet, careful to sit clean on the bench like it was not his bench. He watched him the way you watch a person who might not know the rules. The couple left, and the bell on the door made one small sound and then another. The street noise came in for a second and then did not. He stood up and came over with his hands clasped in front of him. He was not unkind, but he came with something already loaded in his face. He glanced down at the open sketchbook, saw the lines, saw the pencil, saw the cheap paper. He made a short sound that could have been a laugh. "Cute doodle," he said, and it was light, a little sharp. "Careful around the art, yeah? Those pieces cost more than your backpack. Please don't touch the frames." The boy did not look away from his page. He kept his hand still for 1 second. Then he smiled in a small way and said, "I'm just practicing. My grandfather taught me." "Grandfather," he said. "Good for you." He leaned a little closer, as if to look again at the boy's thin, neat lines and maybe to be seen looking. "That's a nice way to spend an afternoon," he said. "Practicing." He turned his face toward the big painting like he was ready to keep walking and say something light about it. He made one more glance down at the page like a salesman making a polite circle, and his eyes fell on the bottom, right where the boy had moved his pencil to a small place and made a mark you could miss if you did not know what a mark could be. The line was simple as a written name, But there was a turn in the middle of it, a small curve inside a bigger curve, a reed drawn like a flourish. It was not a show-off thing, not a scribble, not a cheap fake. It was the way someone writes a name they have written so many times, they feel it in the muscle of their hand before it makes any sound on paper. It looked old because it was a way of writing that did not grab attention. It tucked itself in like a habit. The man's mouth shut, and the joke he had lined up, the one about copying from a #1 hit, died a simple death. He blinked once, and then he leaned closer and pointed, and he heard his own voice change to a lower place. "Where did you learn to write it like that?" he said, and then, because he was someone who knew the better line and knew when he was opening something, he tried to pull it back. "That's a strong hand," he said. "Very close to it. Almost exact." The boy lifted his eyes. They were calm. "From him," he said. "He made me write it until my hand knew it." He said, "If your hand cannot make the turn without thinking, then not yet." He did not like when someone made a mess of it. The man looked at the signature and said nothing for a long heartbeat. He could feel his face getting hotter in the middle. He straightened and looked at the painting on the wall, the plaque, the small card. He looked at the boy's face again. He could not help the thought that ran like a line of cold water down his neck. There were papers in his desk and emails in his sent folder and a private series of calls and a date on a calendar and a low count of days until a dinner in a room with a polished table. "Your grandfather taught you," he said. "Okay." He let the okay out, like someone putting a glass down too quietly. "I'm Graham," he said. "This is Whitby. My gallery." The boy nodded, but did not offer his own name. He set his pencil down in the fold of the book. "You like it?" Graham asked him, pointing his chin at the big piece across the room. "The quiet bell," the boy said. He said it the way you say the name of a song you have heard 100 times and all at once. He did not look at Graham. He looked at the paint. "It's important," Graham said. He kept his voice even. "It's a key piece. He brought it in 57. Well, you know." The boy said nothing. "Your grandfather taught you," he said again, and he knew he was repeating himself, and he knew he looked simple for it. "Your grandfather was." He stopped. He looked at the little flourish in the name drawn on cheap paper, and he knew that he needed something from the boy, and he did not like that. He felt the walls around him, the quiet, the soft light he had paid for, the price of the track lights and the insurance riders and the climate control. He felt how all of that ran on a story he told and sold. "What's your name?" he said. The boy made a small smile that was not nervous and not polite. He said, "Micah." "Micah what?" "Micah Reed." Graham went cold in places he did not like to think about. He did not move for a second. He did not look like he was the one who was shaking, but only because he was someone who knew how to hold a line when he had to. He exhaled through his nose and nodded like this was fine. He felt the other name that hung in this room, the one on the card, the one in the catalog dead center, come up like a wave. "Reed?" He placed each word like a stone. "Malachi Reed was your grandfather?" Micah nodded. He closed his book like a lid and held it with one hand. Graham made himself smile. "Well, that's well." He put his hands on his hips and looked at the big painting on the wall with a new kind of careful. He had been the one to buy it at a private sale 2 years after the painter's funeral. The papers said one of the cousins had sold it to settle a tax issue. He had checked the chain and did not need to see the will to know that half the estate had gone to donations and the other half to people who shared the name only in a thin way. Everyone had whispered about a kid the old man had spent time with, a kid with a serious face who brought him tea, but no one had seen a name. Micah was still looking at the painting. In the quiet, the moving air kept its soft sound. His voice, when it came, was steady. "He told me about the chalk line under the paint," he said. "He told me you could always tell a hand by the way the first line sits when he is alone with the canvas and before he hears anyone else. He said a painter has a private fear and a private joy. It is in the first line and never in the last." Graham swallowed. "That's beautiful," he said. He heard how thin the words sounded in here. "I used to sit on the floor," Micah said, "and he would draw the same bell over and over, not because he loved bells, but because he said the bell was a hard shape. Everyone draws a bell if they are lazy. He said, if you're honest with yourself, draw the same thing until you see where you lie to your own hand." A voice rose from the back. a young woman's voice clear. Need anything up front? It was Lena, his assistant. She moved like a curtain, quick, and stood half-hidden by the box pedestal near the desk. We're good, Graham said without turning his head. His tone made her stay where she was. Micah stood and moved a little closer to the big piece. Graham felt something knot in his throat when the boy took one slow step toward the painting. He wanted to say don't, but did not yet want to be the kind of man who showed his fear this early. He watched the boy's left hand remain at his side, fingers open, and only his right hand lifted his phone and set the face of it to black. He held it near the surface, not touching it, so that the screen, dark and glass, caught the reflection. He moved it across the bottom layer of paint so slowly, as if he were smoothing a wrinkle. No flash, Graham said, and it came out too fast. No flash, Micah said. He kept the phone off, but used the glass to catch the light angle. He leaned close. He breathed slow. He did not touch. He looked at the soft cross-hatched darker strokes in the lower third. He looked at the thin vertical on the left, the place where the paint was thin against the canvas, where the weave showed. He looked in the crack like a hairline near the corner where the underlayer peeks through. He stood back and then forward again. What do you think you're looking at? Graham said. He was trying to make it friendly. He failed and felt it. He thinks he is looking at a life, a voice said in the back of his mind, and it sounded nothing like him. He closed his mouth and let his jaw rest. He didn't have that zinc white after 89, Micah said, not looking away. He said it made the skin go chalky in a year. He threw out the day he saw it. He swore when he saw a dead face in a painting. He swore like he was a different man. He would have not gone back. Graham breathed in, and the air moved the same as always. He used cobalt and flake from then, Micah said. You're very sure, Graham said. I cleaned his brushes, Micah said. Graham held his hands together and found that they were steady. He gave a smile back to Lena because he felt her eyes on him. He planted one foot and let the other slide a little. He looked at the corners of the room like a man counting exits. You said he taught you to sign, Graham said. He heard the echo in his own voice. He taught you, or you copied him. Can I see the back? Micah said. Graham let out a breath, and it was almost a laugh. We don't take down a 7-figure work from the wall in the middle of the day for an informal. He caught himself. For a student. Micah looked at him without anger, only with that slow, patient look that made Graham think of someone old. He said, you put a pencil mark under the stretcher, left side, in a small place where no one looks. 3 dots and a tiny bell, because he had a joke with himself. He did it on the ones he did not want moved from the city. He did it only in-house, for his own notes. He told me, if you need to prove me, look for the bell I ring when I'm alone. That is not in any catalog, Graham said. And then he shut his mouth again because he had said too much, and you could see it on his face. Only someone who had seen more than one would know. Lena took 2 steps closer. Her face had moved to a place of curiosity and a place of fear. She had been there late 2 weeks ago when the piece had been uncrated from a lender's house and hung again. She had looked at the back for a second. She had not seen a bell. Micah said, I don't want to make this loud. Graham considered his choices. He could walk him out. He could laugh and say no. He could call security, and Ben could come from a room by the loading dock and stand in the doorway like a human wall. He could call the collector's lawyer and say there was a nuisance in his shop. He could do any of that, but he could feel something like a wire across his throat that would cut no matter which way he turned. He was a man who could sell a moon if he chose his buyer, but he was not a man who could lie about a mark that might be there or might not. Backroom, he said to Lena. Just a minute. Close the front. He looked at Micah and said, do you understand what you're asking? Micah nodded. Yes. We need gloves, Lena said. Thank you, Graham said. The back room was long and dim and smelled like wood and glue. There were racks on wheels, a tall press, a stainless sink, and 2 big tables that could be raised and lowered. The private pieces lived in racks with bars, each wrapped. There were cartons stacked near the wall, with labels written in tight small caps. A camera watched from corner. The hum of air was louder here and more dry. Graham nodded to Ben, who had drifted in from the loading dock and stood with his hands folded the way a guard does on a day when only the rain comes in. Ben had a kind face. He watched the boy the way he watched everyone, with the ease of someone who had nothing to prove until he had to prove it. We're going to lower bell, Graham said. He said it low. He put on thin gloves, and Lena put on her pair. They let Micah in, but did not let him any closer than the long edge of the table. He did not try to push. His face had gone still. The muscles in his jaw set the way you set a door when you know it will take a push to open. Careful, careful, Graham said, and they unhooked the piece and moved it forward with the weight training of people who handle millions without dropping them. They laid it face down on clean foam blocks, so the frame took nothing of the pressure and the surface did not get shocked. The back was plain wood and old nails and a newer set of screws from a conservation that had happened sometime in the 90s. There was a label from a museum on the lower rail with an accession number, and there was a little tag from a small show in a school gallery on the top right corner. There were bits of paper that had been stuck and then taken off and then stuck again, the ghosts of those pieces in darker rectangles. Micah did not move. He swallowed. He wished he could touch the wood, but he did not. He did not lift his hand, even when the urge went through his fingers like a light shock. Graham ran his fingers along the stretcher low. He was already looking for it before he admitted to himself he was looking. Left side under the cross brace below the middle pin. He squinted, because the light here was good, but the pencil would be faint if it was there at all. He saw nothing. He wiped the wood with a dry, clean cloth and looked again. He leaned closer until his breath fogged the lacquer on the back of the frame. He wiped again. His face went a shade paler as he kept wiping nothing off nothing. "Do you see it?" Micah asked. His voice was very gentle. Graham straightened. His jaw worked. He said no. Micah did not speak. He looked at Lena. She looked back at him with a face that was two faces. One was the one that knew she was not supposed to see things she saw at work. The other was a girl from a small kitchen table where bills were stacked in a neat pile, and you hoped the math would forgive you. Graham felt the walls of the room come in. He could still fix it. He could say some did not. He could say the old man forgot his own tricks. He could say the mark had been hidden by a restorer or sanded down by some idiot. He could say anything. He could make a lie that fit for long enough to walk across the room and put this back and get the boy to the door. He took a breath to pick one. "You know the weight of it?" Micah said, and he did not look away from the wood. Graham blinked. "What?" "The real one." He weighed it and wrote it in the book. "You could feel a pound more when the stretcher wood is oak and not pine." He liked the feel of a heavier hand, he said. He said a room should feel its weight. "You can't weigh a painting by your hands," Graham said, and he let it out too hard. "I can," Micah said. Lena slid her eyes to Graham. Her voice was small. "The crate in storage," she said. "The old heavy one. The one from the Cottrell warehouse. You wanted it moved. It's too heavy for me. I'll put the hold tag on it." Graham turned his head a fraction. He did not look at her. He said, "That crate is dead stock. Leave it." Micah's eyes went to the rack at the back. There was a crate with black straps and stencils. The stencil said CWH/BR 6A in small block letters. It was a number that meant something only in a place where numbers mean many things. "Do you have a key for that?" he said. Graham smiled, and it had no joy in it. "Insurance auditors love when we open dead stock on a rainy day with a child present," he said. "No." He thought of the deal on the table. Private sale. No press. Buyer flying in on Thursday with a driver and an envelope. He had not told Lena the number because he did not say numbers out loud to anyone who did not need them. He had told himself that the estate had gotten enough from the first sales. He had told himself that this was just the way things get done. He had told himself he was not a thief. When he thought it through, he knew he had moved the real one once. He had not lied about its place to anyone who had power to ask. He had only put the brighter copy up front and kept the weight in the back. He had told himself he did it because it was safer there. Micah looked down at his own hands, then at his phone, then at the painting. He said he used to push a pin through the corner of the canvas from the back when he was done with it in the rollers, so that he could hold the thing steady without leaving 2 thumb tracks. The hole would be so small it would vanish on the front in the paint. He said that was how he kept the bell from ringing when he did not want it to. Ben, the guard, shifted his weight. He had watched 100 people lie and 100 people tell truths they did not mean to tell. He had never been called to this exact kind of quiet. He said, "Sir, we should call the estate. That was what you told me to say on the day we put up the new loans." Graham looked at him and smiled in a way that retracted like a blade. He turned back to Micah. He said, I'm going to ask a favor. Please leave the back room. I don't want to be unkind, Micah, but this is not a place for guests. Let me call the right people. Let me do the right thing. For you. For him. Micah said, I'm not going to break anything. I'm not going to shout. I'm not here to make a video or a joke. I'm not here to make money off him. He is already gone. I came to see if the room changed in the way he said it would. He said there would be a day the room would feel wrong. He said that day would come when a man who smiled thinly would tell me he is on my side. Lena closed her eyes for a second, like someone who is about to step into cold water. She walked to the crate. She said, it's strapped but not sealed. The old seal is off. Someone did that. It was likely me. Her voice shook, but she was telling the truth. She tore the paper tag that held the strap ends. She slid the buckle, and the strap made a sound like a sigh. She looked at Graham one more time. He did not stop her. He closed his eyes, then opened them. He had decided on something, but he had not yet admitted what it was. The crate lid was heavy and took both Ben and Lena to flex it up and rest it. Inside, the foam was old but clean. There was a flat wrap panel. You could smell oil and wood. You could smell something like winter spices and clove. There was a corner of brown paper with a handwriting on it. Not a label, not clean, just a note like someone writes in a hurry before they forget what they mean to say. Micah took a step forward. He did not reach in. He did not have to. He saw the return address on a piece of old tape, and he saw the shape of the letter L and the hook of the R, and he saw the way the curve had been made by a hand that had done it many times. He's going to take that from you too? A voice said in his head. It was not his voice. It was his mother's, low and tired, 2 years before she got quiet forever. He stood very still. Graham stood over the edge of the crate and did not look at anyone else. He said, we are calling the estate. He said it like he was not the one who was making a choice he should have made before. He said it like he was reading from a rule book. His face looked older by a week. Micah said, you knew he died without a clean will. You knew the cousins did not have the right view. You knew his mind was fine, but his hand was slow. You met him. He did not like you. He said you do a great smile at a funeral. Graham took the hit and did not bend with it. He said, I worked with him. He was hard. He was brilliant. He was unkind when he was tired. He used to tell me that I should sell used cars. He was also right about me when he said I would never put my hands in the paint. You put your hands in the money, Micah said, not loud. Graham nodded once. I put my hands in the money. Someone has to count the numbers. Someone has to stand between the paint and the broad day. That is also true. He did not look at Lena when he said it. He did not look at Ben. He kept his eyes on the wrapped thing in the crate and what it meant. The phone on the desk in the front started to ring. It was softer here, but you could hear it like a pulse. Lena moved to go get it, but Graham said no. Let it go. If they want us, they will wait 1 minute. Micah reached for his sketchbook and flipped to the back where the paper was thicker. He slid his pencil from the fold. He drew 3 small dots and a small bell that was almost nothing. He pushed the page toward Graham without a flourish. He said, he taught me to put this where it could not be seen. He said, save your loud for the canvas. Save your loud for when you are alone. He told me that last month before he went into the hospital for the last time. Lena looked at him. She had known the year the old man died. She had gone to the talk. She had watched the video of him in his hat, his hands on his knees, telling a room that painting is the slowest way he knew to keep a secret. She felt her heart rise into her throat now. I'm his sole heir, Micah said. It came out like something he had said to himself 100 times and almost never to anyone else in the world. He said it and swallowed. He said it like he did not plan to say it here in this room, and yet it was the only place it ever fit. My mother's gone. He named me. He told me it would be a long time before anyone cared what I said, and that when they did, I would not like the places I had to be. Graham took a breath in and let it out. He nodded in a small way that was almost a bow and could have been mistaken for one if you did not know him. He said, I'm sorry. For what? Micah said. He held the sketchbook in 2 hands now, like he was afraid his grip would shake and make it fall. For the way I looked at you when you came in, he said. For the way I spoke. For calling it a cute doodle. That was a long time ago, 10 minutes ago. He smiled with a tiny line at the corner of his mouth that had nothing to do with the sale. He looked like a person for a second. There was a small beat of silence. Then Lena said, "We need to look under the stretcher on this one." She put a hand out toward the wrapped piece. Graham nodded once, and they lifted it as a team, unwrapped the corners, eased it face down onto the soft blocks. Micah would remember the feeling in his chest for the rest of his life. There are moments when your heart makes a kind of noise inside you. Not a thump you can hear, but a pressure like a hand on your chest. He stood where he was allowed to stand and did not move or breathe in a way that could change the air. Graham ran the cloth along the left stretcher below the middle. The wood was darker here. The pencil was faint, but there. 3 tiny dots. A bell so small it was almost a question. He did not say anything. Lena made a soft sound that could have been a laugh and could have been a sob. Ben let out a breath. "There," Graham said. He looked at Micah and then down again. "There." Micah nodded. He did not smile. He did not cry. He held his book and did not move. He felt like the room had gone a little larger in a way that made you feel cold. Graham leaned on the table with both hands. He said, "The piece on the wall is a copy." He let out the hard part. He watched the boy's face as he said the thing that would move money in the world by pounds. "It is a good copy. It was made by a man we hire for things like this. It was not put up to cheat," he said, and he hated himself as he said it, because it was not true and it was not upon a truth either. He shook his head and corrected himself in a way he did not do in other rooms. It was put up to protect. For a minute. Longer than a minute. Long enough to sell the real one quietly and get it back into the right hands without noise. He said it like a confession. He looked at the floor while he said it, and when he finished, he looked back at Micah. "Whose hands?" Micah said, "His friend who thinks he was his friend. An old man with a vault. A man who learned to love art as something he could eat when business made him sick. The kind of man who thinks it is honorable to put a thing under lights in his own home and let people who he invites see it on Wednesdays. The kind who thinks he is doing more good than harm." He had that buyer lined up in his mind. He had shaken the hand in a dark restaurant with linen. Micah said nothing. He stood like a boy and like a man and like both at once. The phone had stopped and then started again. Lena went, and this time she picked it up. She listened and said, "One moment, please." She held it out to Graham. "Who is it?" he said. "The estate office," she said. "They were returning your call." There was a quiet humor in her voice that was not kind. It was not mean either. It was only real. Graham took the phone. He said his name. He listened. He nodded. He said, "I think you want to come." He looked at Micah while he said it. He said the address. He said, "Today." He said, "Yes, he's here." He said, "He says he is, and he is." He handed the phone back to Lena and put his hands flat on the table. He said, "Do you want this one to go back on the wall while we wait?" Micah looked at the back of the panel with the small pencil marks and thought about the room out there with the lights and the floor and the soft hum. He thought of his grandfather sitting on a low stool in a small kitchen at night, his hands quiet, telling him that sometimes you have to let a thing sit in the light so that people cannot lie about it. And then sometimes you have to pull it into the dark so that the lie is the only thing anyone can see when they go looking for you. "No," he said, "leave it here. Let the copy hang in that light. Let the pretty lie draw the eyes." He was not smiling. He was not talking brave. He was saying what he believed. Graham closed his eyes and nodded. He stood up straight. He tucked his tie back into place. He said, "Would you like tea?" It was a dumb offer and a good one, because in that moment all a man could do was offer something normal. Micah laughed, a small sound, barely there. He said he never drank tea. He drank hot water, and he called it tea because he liked how it sounded. "I have hot water," Graham said. "I'm okay," Micah said. He sat on the low rolling stool near the sink and put the sketchbook on his lap again, not to draw, only to have it in his hands. He looked at the sealed door and the small glass square where you could see the front door and the rain on the glass beyond that, and the street where nothing had changed in 100 years. It stayed like that. Ben leaned near the door and watched the hallway. Lena stood close by and touched no frames. Graham made calls that had short, clean words at first, and then longer ones that broke apart at the ends. He said, "We made an error." He said, "It can be fixed." He said, "Yes, I understand." He said, "Today, not tomorrow." Michael looked up at the big fluorescent tube and then down again. There was a sound a long time later Shoes in the front, a voice, a low voice, a woman saying a name with a soft sound in the middle of it. Lena opened the door and let two people in. One was a lawyer in black with a bag and a calm face. The other was a man with a camera case for inspection and a light pen. They were the right people. They had badges, and they had the exact way of moving that said someone else had told them they had to be careful how they enter space. "Are you Micah?" the woman said, and she put a hand on her heart for a second like someone bends with a wind. He nodded. He stood. "I knew your mother," she said quietly. "We spoke 3 times. She was firm and smart." "I am sorry." He did not know what to say. He nodded once. They looked. They looked at the pencil. They looked at the creases in the canvas and the corners where the wood had been replaced once with hands that loved wood. They looked at the little mistakes a second hand makes when he earns his money by hiding that his hand was second. They looked at the one on the wall, and they held the light at an angle, and they saw the way the surface said clever and did not say brave. In the end, they said the word that moves or breaks a room. They said, "This is not right." They said, "This is..." Graham stood and listened to each word like a small stone dropped into a glass of water. He did not try to pull the stones out. He said, "What would you like us to do?" And he knew he had lost the top of the hill and that he could still hold a line at the bottom by choosing to stay or to run. He chose to stay. "You will place the real one on the wall. You will issue a statement. You will write the insurer. You will tell the buyer to go home." The woman's voice was low and did not break. She looked at Micah when she said it. "You will sit with him, and you will write historian copy that names his grandfather with the respect he is due. You will do it in a way that does not make this into a circus. You will put a guard in this room at all times. You will not be the hero of this story. He will not either. The work will be..." Graham nodded. He did not look like a hero. He did not look like a villain. He looked like a man who had put his hands in the money and now had them open where all could see. They rehung it. They did it slow, and the air felt different. Lena watched Micah's face as the heavy panel left the foam blocks and turned in space and became once again the thing the room knew it by. The frame caught the light. The colors looked like the room had never earned them before. It was the same room on the same day, but the light was cleaner. Even the hum of the air was different. Graham stood beside Micah and did not get in front of him. He said, "He would not have liked me. He might have thrown me out of his kitchen. He would have been right. He was also right that some men should never be near the paint. I will write the statement. I will send it to the office for check. Micah, if you want to change a word, you can change a word." "I don't want to be in a statement," Micah said. "I know," Graham said. Micah's phone buzzed once in his pocket. He did not look at it. He did not look away from the painting. "You laugh at a thing before you know what it is," he said to no one in particular. He said it like he was saying it to the wall. His voice had no heat. He said, "He told me that is the way of it." He said, "People are quick with the small laugh when they are afraid." He said, "You will see that every day." He told me to let them laugh. Then he told me to make my hand steady, so that when I sign, it is mine even when the room makes its small laugh. Graham looked at the boy and then back at the work. He saw the bell now in a way he had not seen it before. He felt the weight in the room settle. He made himself go and stand at the desk and start to write in his own hand, because it felt right to use his hand and not a screen. He wrote slowly. He crossed out words. He found simple ones and left them alone. People came in as the afternoon turned to a soft evening where the rain let up and the light outside went to the color of milk. They stood in a line and watched. They did not know what they were looking at except that it was the thing. You could see it in their faces. Some work does not need a sign. It needs only time and the empty place your mind makes when it gives up being clever and lets itself be moved. Micah sat on the bench and opened his book again. He did not draw the room. He did not draw the frame. He wrote his name on a blank page in the way his hand knew. He did it once. He did not draw the reed flourish this time. He put a straight line under his name like a quiet thing in a room. "Do you want to ride home?" Lena asked him later in the doorway with the bell, and the street air came in and was clean. She was young and tired and bright. "I'll take the bus," he said. He did not mind the bus. He liked the way his city sounded when you're not in a car. He walked to the stop underneath a building with old iron over the door. He looked one more time through the glass. He saw the man at the desk, writing with a pen. He saw the picture on the wall. He saw the people in front of it, trying to be quiet with their faces. He saw his own face reflected faintly in the glass, and the line of rain on his shoulders. He put his hands in his jacket and found a small folded paper in the inside pocket. He had put it there that morning. It was an old envelope with a note in a hand that looked like his but older. It was not a long note. It said, "If you stand in a white room and they make you feel small, make your hand bigger." That was all. He smiled into the glass, not big. The bus came. He got on. He sat by the window and watched the light slide off the wet street. He held the envelope in his hand like a person who does not want anything from anyone else right now. Behind him, in a white room, the air moved like it always had. In that room, a man wrote a statement, and a woman watched the door, and a guard stood and watched everyone. In that room, the weight landed where it was meant to land. In that room, a bell did not make a sound, and yet everyone in it heard it.